What if I told you that everything you see in this world is a lie? What if your own mind, your own memories, and every single thing you blindly trust were spinning a massive conspiracy against you? In the year 2010, one of the greatest directors in cinema history, Martin Scorsese, crafted a psychological masterpiece, Shutter Island. Millions of people flocked to theaters to witness it. Audiences walked out believing they had just watched a classic detective thriller about a brave Marshal who travels to a mysterious island, hunts for a missing patient, and cracks the case. But the truth is, nearly 99% of people completely missed the real message of this film. This story was never about a detective investigation. It was a journey into the darkest corner of the human psyche, a place where a person creates an entire universe of lies just to bury a horrific truth they committed with their own hands. And do you want to know the most mind-blowing part? Martin Scorsese laid out the biggest suspense, the ultimate climax of the movie, right on your screen within the first 5 minutes. Yet, your mind, your subconscious, completely ignored the blindingly obvious clue. Today, we are going to tear through every single corner of this island. A journey that will fundamentally change the way you think. Because in this story, what you see isn't real, and what is real is exactly what you refuse to see. The story begins in the year 1954. The Cold War is at its peak. The entirety of America is living under a heavy shadow of fear and paranoia. Amidst this suffocating atmosphere, a ferry cuts through the crashing ocean waves, heading straight toward Shutter Island. On board is Edward "Teddy" Daniels, a highly capable and battle-hardened U.S. Marshal. Accompanying him is his brand new partner, Chuck All. The duo has been dispatched to this isolated island to solve an incredibly bizarre, seemingly impossible case. But right from this opening frame, the director begins playing a profound psychological game with your mind. Teddy Daniels, supposedly a tough, fearless officer, is violently trembling at the mere sight of the ocean water. He is suffering from severe sea sickness, desperately clutching a bathroom mirror to compose himself. There is an eerie, palpable tension in the air. When the two marshals finally step onto the island's shores, the sight before them freezes their blood. Think about it. Federal marshals, the highest legal authority in the country, are arriving at a hospital. In a normal world, the staff should feel relieved. But here? The guards stand perfectly rigid, as if preparing for an all-out war. Their fingers are tightly locked on the triggers of their rifles. Their eyes hold no warmth of welcome, only a deeply unsettling mix of dread and suspicion. To top it off, Teddy and Chuck are forced to surrender their firearms right at the gates. This is the absolute first rule of the island. Here, the law of the government does not exist. Only the law of the hospital directors applies. This island is no ordinary facility. This is Ashcliff Hospital, a fortress designed to hold the nation's most dangerous, most violent, and mentally unhinged criminals. These are individuals who have committed acts so monstrous that society brands them insane and conventional prisons refuse to house them. The hospital is strictly divided into 3 distinct sections: Ward A, Ward B, and the deeply enigmatic Ward C. Ward C is an ancient, decaying stone fortress that locks away the most volatile and brutal patients of all. Now, let's talk about the case that sent shockwaves through the government. A female patient, Rachel Solando, has vanished thin out of the air from her completely locked room. And this wasn't just any room. The only door out was heavily barred and padlocked from the outside. The windows were reinforced with solid iron grates. Most importantly, the island is surrounded for miles by a treacherous, lethal sea, heavily patrolled at every cliffside by armed guards. How can a woman who is completely mentally unstable escape a locked room and slip past a military-grade security perimeter entirely barefoot and unseen? When Teddy thoroughly searches her room, he discovers a tiny piece of paper hidden beneath the floorboards. On it, a cryptic code is scrawled, "The Law of 4, who is 67?" But this is exactly where the narrative takes a profoundly disturbing turn. While Teddy is investigating the missing woman's room, look closely at the faces of the doctors and nurses standing in the background. They aren't trying to help Teddy find clues. Instead, they are tracking his every single movement, analyzing his every breath. It doesn't look like an investigation at all. It feels as though Teddy is a lab rat who has unwittingly stepped directly into a massive psychological cage. As darkness falls, the mystery of the island deepens. The weather takes a violent turn. A catastrophic, historic hurricane is barreling directly toward the island. Lightning tears through the sky, the telephone lines are completely severed, and all communication with the outside world is utterly destroyed. Now no one can come to the island, and absolutely no one can leave. Everything is locked down. But for Teddy, the real storm isn't raging outside, it has triggered inside his own skull. The moment he steps onto the island, he is struck by an excruciating, blinding migraine. His hands begin to tremble violently. When he finally drifts into sleep, he is plagued by horrific, deeply haunting nightmares. Nightmares of his late wife, Dolores, who tragically perished in a devastating apartment fire. In these visions, he speaks to her, desperately reaching out to hold her, only for her to turn into ash and crumble through his fingers. Things spiral out of control when the hospital's chief staff physician, Dr. John Cawley, flatly refuses to cooperate with Teddy. He denies him access to the patient's medical files. The hospital staff parrots rehearsed, robotic answers to every question. Slowly, a terrifying realization dawns upon Teddy. Something profoundly sinister is happening here. Is this hospital actually treating the insane? Or is the U.S. government using the isolation of Shutter Island as a cover to run illegal, horrific mind control experiments on innocent human beings? The atmosphere becomes suffocating. Walls of paranoia and dread are closing in on Teddy from all sides. No one trusts him, and he can trust absolutely no one. Every single face is wearing a mask. But remember, this is merely the entrance to the labyrinth. The real story, and the hidden facts that will rip the ground out from under your feet, are about to unravel. Part 2. Behind the scenes. To elevate a psychological thriller into a masterpiece, a brilliant script isn't enough. You need an environment that physically suffocates the audience the moment it appears on screen. Director Martin Scorsese knew that if Shutter Island was to become an immortal cult classic, he couldn't rely on glittering Hollywood studios or green screens. He needed a location that harbored a genuinely dark history of its own. His quest ended at the Medfield State Hospital, in Massachusetts. This was no movie set. It was a real historic psychiatric asylum built in 1896. A madhouse that, for decades, had buried the agonizing screams of thousands of mentally disturbed and violent patients within its brick walls. When Scorsese's crew arrived in 2008, the facility had been abandoned for years, silent and decaying. The film's crew and actors later revealed in interviews that working on that location felt like psychological torture. There was a heavy, oppressive energy lingering in the air. Leonardo DiCaprio confessed that whenever he stepped into the rooms of that ancient asylum, he felt as though invisible eyes were constantly burning into him. The atmosphere was so profoundly depressing that within a few weeks of shooting, several crew members began experiencing genuine depression and panic attacks. Scorsese deliberately left the most dilapidated sections of the hospital untouched. He wanted the authentic misery and terror of the environment to bleed into the actors' faces. In an era where every second Hollywood film is constructed on green screens and CGI, Martin Scorsese made a strict vow. He would use minimal visual effects. He wanted the audience's heads to spin in physical discomfort alongside Teddy Daniels. The ultimate testament to this is the scene where Teddy experiences a blinding migraine upon entering the hospital, causing the corridors to warp and distort unnervingly. To induce this visceral discomfort, production designer Dante Ferretti executed a stroke of genius. He built specific hospital corridors and rooms on mechanical gimbals. This meant the sets were actually suspended in the air and could be mechanically tilted or rotated. When Leonardo DiCaprio was walking down those hallways, the entire set was physically shifting beneath his feet. The actors had to genuinely struggle to maintain their balance. When you see Teddy gripping the walls just to walk, that isn't acting. His body is naturally fighting to stay upright on a moving floor. Furthermore, Scorsese utilized reverse filming in several sequences, such as cigarette smoke or water droplets moving against gravity. He instructed the actors to perform their actions entirely backward, which was later reversed in the editing room. This was meticulously done to send a continuous signal to the viewer's subconscious. Something in this world is fundamentally wrong. Everything looked normal on the surface, yet felt terrifyingly abnormal. Playing Teddy Daniels was one of the most brutal, emotionally draining experiences of Leonardo DiCaprio's career. To prepare for the role, he didn't just memorize lines. 5. At Scorsese's behest, he intensely studied historical documents from 1950s psychiatric institutions, reading about the barbaric medical treatments of the era. He watched raw historical footage of World War II veterans suffering from severe shell shock and PTSD. DiCaprio admitted that during production he was plagued by insomnia and restless nights, haunted by nightmares identical to the ones Teddy experiences in the film. The scenes where Teddy holds his wife Dolores as she literally turns to ash completely broke DiCaprio emotionally. To capture that agonizing shot perfectly, Dozens of retakes were ordered, forcing DiCaprio to dive back into a state of profound, weeping grief over and over again. The exhaustion, the hollow eyes, and the sheer helplessness you see on his face weren't just the work of makeup. It was the physical manifestation of weeks of mental and emotional battery. But the most shocking truth behind the production lies hidden within the film's budget and a crucial deleted scene. A scene that Scorsese shot with immense care, but was forced to slice away at the 11th hour. If that scene had remained, the ultimate twist of Shutter Island would have been spoiled before the intermission. During its production in 2008 to 2009, the film's budget skyrocketed to roughly $80 million, an astronomical sum for a psychological thriller. Paramount Pictures grew so terrified of the project that they delayed its release date by several months. The executives feared that the narrative was far too dark, dense, and complex for mainstream audiences to comprehend, predicting a colossal box office disaster. But Scorsese stood unyielding in his creative vision. Let's look at that deleted scene. In the original draft of the script, when Teddy enters Ward C for the very first time, he encounters an old patient aggressively scratching lines into a wall with a piece of charcoal. The old man stops, looks directly at Teddy, smiles eerily, and says, "You aren't here for the first time, Edward." Hearing this line instantly paralyzes Teddy. However, sitting in the editing room, Martin Scorsese made the executive decision to cut the entire interaction from the film. Scorsese realized that this single line handed the audience too massive a clue. He wanted the viewers to remain entirely in the dark until the final second, wandering blindly alongside Teddy. He wanted us to view this island through the eyes of a detective, not a prisoner. It was this exact directorial deception that transformed the film into an immortal cult classic. Now that we have entered the labyrinth of Shutter Island, we must dissect the mind of the man carrying the entire weight of this narrative on his shoulders, Edward "Teddy" Daniels. At first glance, Teddy embodies the quintessential post-war American hero. He is a Marshal clad in a sharp trench coat, armed with a federal badge, a regulation sidearm, and an unshakable resolve to uphold the law at any cost. But if you peel back this hardened, courageous mask just a millimeter, you find a man who is utterly hollowed out, shattered, and buried alive under the crushing debris of his own memories. Teddy's entire personality and existence are dictated by two things: profound trauma and paralyzing guilt. He lives under the suffocating weight of two horrific memories. The first is from 1945, when, as an American soldier, he helped liberate the Dachau concentration camp there. He witnessed human depravity in its rawest, most naked form, mountains of innocent corpses that permanently scarred his soul. The second, and far more lethal memory, is the death of his wife, Dolores. Teddy claims she died of smoke inhalation in a tragic apartment fire intentionally set by a man named Andrew Leddies. A arsonist Teddy believes is currently locked away inside Shutter Island, and the man he is hunting for vengeance. However, the vital detail to notice is that Teddy's entire detective persona, his righteous fury, and his obsession, are a massive psychological defense mechanism. His mind is desperately trying to suppress a truth so monstrous that facing it would instantly obliterate his remaining sanity. He plays the part of a detective purely so he never has to face himself. He hunts for criminals across the country to avoid looking at the ultimate criminal living inside his own head. Even his garish, brightly patterned tie, a gift from his wife, isn't just a piece of clothing. It is the final, fragile thread of his sanity that he refuses to let go of. Next, let's analyze the most mysterious and powerful figure on the island, Dr. John Cawley. He is the chief psychiatrist of Ashcliffe Hospital. His demeanor is exceptionally calm, measured, and articulate. From the opening act, the director deliberately manipulates you into deeply suspecting Dr. Cawley. In an era where the world viewed psychiatry as a tool of institutional torture, where patients were chained to walls, subjected to brutal electroshock therapy. To make any psychological thriller film great, just a good story is not enough. It needs an atmosphere that chokes the audience as soon as it comes in front of the camera. Director Martin Scorsese knew very well that if Shutter Island was to be made an immortal masterpiece, he would not have to take the help of any shining Hollywood studio or green screen. He would have to find a place that itself holds a scary history within its walls. And his search ended at Medfield State Hospital, in Massachusetts. This was no movie set. It was a real, historic mental asylum built in the year 1896. A madhouse that had buried the screams of thousands of mentally ill and violent patients inside its walls for decades. When Scorsese's team arrived here in the year 2008, this place had been lying deserted and desolate for years. The film's crew and actors revealed in their interviews that working on that location was no less than a torture. There was a strange heaviness in the air there. Leonardo DiCaprio said that whenever he stepped into the rooms of that old hospital, he felt as if an invisible force was constantly staring at him. The atmosphere there was so depressing that within a few weeks of shooting, many crew members started getting depression and panic attacks. Scorsese deliberately left the dilapidated parts of that place as they were, because he wanted that real sadness and dread of the set to be clearly visible on the faces of the artists. In today's era when every second Hollywood movie is made on green screens and computer graphics, Martin Scorsese took an oath he would use minimal visual effects in this film. He wanted that when Teddy Daniels' mind spins on screen, the audience's head should also literally start spinning. And the biggest example of this is that scene where Teddy gets a terrible migraine and headache as soon as he steps onto the island, and the hospital corridors appear to move in a strange way. To create this discomfort, production designer Dante Ferretti made a master plan. He prepared some special corridors and rooms of the hospital on gimbals, meaning that set was actually up in the air from the ground and could be slowly tilted or rotated through machines. When Leonardo DiCaprio was walking in that corridor, the entire set was literally physically shaking. The actors had to do real hard work to maintain their balance. This is the reason why when you see Teddy walking while holding the walls, he is not acting. His body is genuinely trying to balance on that moving set. Not only this, in many scenes of the film, Scorsese used reverse filming, like cigarette smoke or water droplets floating in the air. He asked the actors to do reverse acting in some scenes and later that shot was rewound. This was all done so that the audience's subconscious mind keeps getting the signal that there is something in this world that is not in its right place. Everything looked abnormal despite looking normal. Playing the character of Teddy Daniels was one of the toughest and most exhausting experiences of Leonardo DiCaprio's career. To prepare for this role, he didn't just memorize the script. At Martin Scorsese's request, he read documents of mental hospitals from the 1950s, which mentioned the most brutal medical treatments of that era. He watched footage of real interviews of those soldiers of World War II who were suffering from shell shock, or PTSD. DiCaprio himself admitted that he could not sleep for many nights during the shooting. He used to have constant nightmares, the exact same nightmares that Teddy gets in the film. Especially those scenes where Teddy sees his dead wife Dolores and his wife turns into ashes in his arms. DiCaprio was completely broken emotionally while doing that scene. Dozens of retakes were taken to make that shot perfect, and every time DiCaprio had to go into that same deep sorrow and crying state. When you see that fatigue, dark circles under the eyes and helplessness on his face in the film, it was no miracle of makeup. It was the result of weeks of mental and physical exhaustion. But the biggest and most shocking truth of this entire shoot was hidden in the film's budget and a deleted scene. A scene that Scorsese had shot with great passion, but had to remove from the film at the last moment. If that scene remained in the film, the suspense of Shutter Island would have come out in front of the whole world before the interval. In 2008-2009 when this film was being made, its budget was around $80 million. This was a huge amount for a psychological thriller film. Paramount Pictures was so scared about this film that they postponed its release date for several months. They feared that the story of the film was so dark and entangled that ordinary audiences would not be able to understand it at all and this film would flop badly at the box office. But Scorsese stuck to his vision. Now let's talk about that deleted scene. In the original draft of the script, when Teddy goes inside Ward C for the first time, he finds an old patient in a room who is drawing some lines on the wall with charcoal. That old man smiles looking at Teddy and says, "You haven't come here for the first time, Edward." Hearing this line, Teddy is shocked. But Martin Scorsese sat in the editing room and cut this entire scene from the film. Scorsese believed that this line would give a huge hint to the audience. He wanted the audience to remain in the dark until the last second, just like Teddy. He wanted the audience to see this island through the eyes of a detective, not a prisoner. And this was that cleverness of the director that made this film a cult classic. So this was that struggle to bring this island to the screen, which shook the minds of the artists. But now the time has come to skin the characters of this story, because the next part will tell you who every single person present on this island actually was. After stepping into the labyrinth of Shutter Island, now we have to peer into the mind of the man on whose shoulders the burden of this entire story rests, Edward "Teddy" Daniels. At first glance, Teddy looks like an ideal American hero to us. He is a Marshal who wears a coat, suit, who has a federal badge, a gun, and who is ready to risk his life to protect the law. But if you remove this strict and brave mask of his a little bit, you will find a person inside who has become completely hollow from within, who is broken, and who is buried under the debris of his own memories. Teddy's entire personality, his entire existence is defined by just two things: his trauma and his guilt. He is living in the shadow of two extremely terrible memories. The first memory is of the year 1945, when as an American soldier he liberated the Dachau concentration camp. There he saw that naked form of human cruelty, those mountains of corpses of thousands of innocent people, which wounded his soul forever. And the second, even more painful memory is of the death of his wife Dolores. Teddy claims that his wife died due to suffocation from smoke caused by a fire in an apartment. He wants to take revenge for his wife's death from a man named Andrew Leddies, who in his eyes is the criminal who set that fire and is locked up on this very Shutter Island. But the point to note is that this entire detective work of Teddy, his anger, his obsession, is actually a defense mechanism. His mind is trying to hide a truth that is so terrible that if it comes out, Teddy's mental balance will be completely destroyed. He is pretending to be a detective so that he doesn't have to face himself. He is searching for criminals in the whole world so that he can ignore the biggest criminal sitting inside him. That strange, flamboyant tie of his, which his wife gifted him, is no ordinary piece of cloth. It is the last thread of his remaining sanity, which he does not want to let go until his death. Now let's talk about the most mysterious and powerful character of Shutter Island, Dr. John Cawley. He is the chief psychiatrist of this entire Ashcliffe hospital. His way of talking is extremely calm, measured, and composed. From the very beginning of the film, the director forces you to suspect Dr. Cawley. When in that era of the Cold War the whole world considered psychiatry a torture tool, where in the name of curing madmen they were kept tied up, given shock therapy or lobotomy surgery was done to numb their minds forever, Dr. Cawley describes himself as a person of a different thought. Dr. Cawley says that he wants to treat patients not with medicines or violence, but with therapy, conversation, and empathy. But this very goodness of his creates a deep distrust in the minds of the audience. Teddy feels, and through him we also feel, that Dr. Cawley is just wearing a mask. Behind this calm smile of his hides a cruel scientist who is conducting illegal mind control experiments on humans on this island. He pretends to help Teddy find the truth, but also puts hurdles in his path at every step. Dr. Cawley's character in this film is a symbol of authority, a system that you can never fully trust because you don't know whether it is curing you or making you mad. But right here comes a hidden fact that will shake the nerves of your brain. Think carefully. Throughout the film, whenever Teddy has a hallucination of his dead wife Dolores, despite burning in fire, she always appears turning into ashes and water. Blood is flowing from her stomach. If she died only from smoke, where did the blood and water come from on her stomach? This is a clue that forever exposes the bridge between Dr. Cawley's hidden agenda and Teddy's madness. The third most important pillar of this story is Chuck All, Teddy's new partner who has been sent from Seattle for this case. Mark Ruffalo, playing the character of Chuck, appears throughout this film as a very loyal, calm, and sensible partner. He stands by Teddy in every difficulty, accompanies him in the storm, and handles him when Teddy's head starts splitting. He feels like a friend who can be blindly trusted on this strange island. But if you watch the film a second time, you will notice a very strange thing in Chuck's character. In the very first 5 minutes of the film, when they are handing over their guns to the guards at the gate of the island, Chuck fumbles a bit in unbuckling his gun holster. How can a man who describes himself as an experienced Marshal of years show clumsiness in drawing his own gun? This small detail is screaming out loud that Chuck is not who he claims to be. He is not helping Teddy by becoming his partner, rather he is keeping a close watch on him by staying with Teddy like a shadow. He is not a detective's companion, but the caretaker of that psychological cage in which Teddy is locked up. And finally, we have to talk about that character who, despite not being alive throughout the film, holds her possession on every single frame. Dolores Chanel, Teddy's dead wife. Dolores in this film is no ordinary ghost or memory. She is that voice of Teddy's subconscious mind, which repeatedly pulls him towards the truth and also drives him away from it. Whenever Teddy gets his visions, Dolores always comes forward in a beautiful yet scary form. Dolores's yellow gown shines out the most in the dark and gray background of the entire film. She warns Teddy in dreams that this island will never let you go. Rachel Solando is still here, you have to go to the lighthouse. Dolores's character is actually a symbol of Teddy's broken heart which is asking forgiveness for its mistake. He is punishing himself by making the sorrow of his wife's death a weapon. As beautiful as Dolores looks, her truth is equally poisonous. She is no memory, she is that jailer of Teddy's mind who has bound him in the shackles of Shutter Island. These are those pawns of Shutter Island who are playing their respective moves on this chessboard. But the real game is in those clues hidden behind these characters, which the director has scattered in the background of the entire film. Because now we are going to that part, where a small movement of the camera and a minor game of colors will change the reality of the entire film. Martin Scorsese doesn't just tell stories, he hypnotizes your mind through colors on screen. If you watch Shutter Island very closely and again, you will understand that every single frame of this film was screaming to tell you the truth. The entire visual psychology of this film rests on just two elements: fire and water. And Scorsese has done a massive deception with your subconscious mind by using these two colors. Understand the entire color coding of the film. Throughout the film, whenever fire, or red and yellow color, comes on screen, it represents the imaginary world of Teddy's mind, his delusion. Whenever Teddy is in a delusion or sees his dead wife, a fire is burning there is a yellow gown or a matchstick. Fire here is a symbol of lie and fantasy, which Teddy himself has woven to hide the truth. But exactly opposite to this, whenever water, or deep blue color, comes on screen, it shows the brutal reality. Water in this film is a symbol of truth, and this is the reason why Teddy hates water so much. On the ship, Teddy feels like vomiting seeing the water. As soon as he steps onto the island, torrential rain starts from the sky, which does not stop until the end of the film. This rain is no ordinary weather. It is reality which is trying to demolish Teddy's fortress of lies at every moment. Whenever Teddy comes close to the truth, the storm becomes more terrible. Scorsese used these two contradictions of colors and nature to put the audience in the same mental conflict through which Teddy himself was passing. When a mistake happens in big Hollywood movies, it is dismissed by calling it a continuity mistake. But a mistake does not happen unintentionally in a film by an Oscar-winning director like Martin Scorsese. A scene comes in the first half hour of the film where Teddy is interrogating a female patient of the hospital. That woman asks for water to drink. Now watch this scene very closely without blinking. In the first frame, there is no glass in the woman's hand, she is acting to drink water with an empty hand by raising her hand in the air. But as soon as the camera angle changes, she places a real glass down on the table. Ordinary audiences leave it considering it an editing mistake. But this was no mistake. As I mentioned earlier, water in this film is a symbol of unpleasant truth. Since we are watching this entire story through Teddy's eyes, Teddy's sick mind does not want to see the water in that glass at all. His mind makes the water disappear, but when the glass hits the table, its sound brings Teddy back to reality. Scorsese proved with this one shot that the very narrator on whom we are relying to watch the story, his own mind is completely scattered. Not only colors and visuals, Scorsese played a very deep game with camera positioning and sub-coordinates as well. In many scenes of the film he used the Dutch angle, taking a shot by tilting or inclining the camera slightly. This cinematic technique creates an unknown fear, anxiety, and mental instability inside the audience without saying anything. You feel that something is strange, but you cannot understand what. Now look at the behavior of the guards of the island. Whenever Teddy enters a room, the soldiers and guards present there become as alert as if a prisoner is trying to escape. When Teddy is walking in the grounds of Ward B, look at the guards standing in the background. They are not keeping an eye on the prisoners. Their guns and their eyes are directly chasing Teddy Daniels. In one scene, a guard catches his rifle in a fully ready position as soon as Teddy moves towards him. Why would anyone behave like this with two Marshals? Because they all knew who Teddy was, and they were waiting for him to become violent at any moment. The biggest feature of this film is its sound design. There is no traditional background score in this entire film. Martin Scorsese did not get a new music composed by any composer. Rather, he chose the darkest and most turbulent pieces of modern classical music. Especially the music of Krzysztof Penderecki, who is known for his terrifying and screaming-like melodies. If you listen to this film wearing headphones, you will hear a very low-frequency hum in the background in many scenes. This sound directly triggers the fear part of the human brain. Whenever Teddy has a headache, a very faint high-pitched whistle-like sound has been put in the background. It is so subtle that your attention does not go to it, but it creates the same irritability and headache inside you that Teddy is feeling. Scorsese did not just make you an audience of a film, he made you a partner in Teddy's madness through the soundtrack. But all these hidden details are just a small part of that real truth that the people of the island are hiding. Because now we are going to step into that part which is Hollywood's most favorite zone, fan theories. Some theories that will prove that the ending you saw on screen could also be a massive deception. This deception of the camera has completely numbed your mind. But now the time has come to face those most dangerous theories that have created a stir on the internet. The biggest beauty of Shutter Island is that this film keeps running in your mind even after it ends. Such theories exist about this film in Hollywood and on the internet, hearing which even good cinema experts' minds spun. And the first and most popular theory among these is the government mind control conspiracy. This theory says that the climax shown to us was actually a massive and cruel lie woven by the doctors. Just think, the background of the film is of the year 1954, when the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union was at its peak. In that very era, the US government had genuinely run a highly secret and brutal mind control program named MK Ultra, where attempts were made to completely change human minds through drugs and torture. This theory says that Teddy Daniels was no mad patient. He was genuinely a real, brave Marshal who had come to this island to expose this very illegal and dark truth. According to this theory, as soon as Teddy steps onto this island, the doctors and government here become alert. They do not want their horrific secret to come in front of the world. Therefore, instead of eliminating Teddy, they make his mind itself their weapon. The water they give him to drink, the cigarettes he constantly smokes, and the medicines given to him in the name of headache, a very dangerous drug was being slowly mixed in all of them. This drug brings back hallucinations and old trauma inside a human being. The doctors deliberately used the weakness of Teddy's past and entangled him in such a false story that in the end Teddy himself started doubting his reality. The doctors broke him to such an extent that he considered himself Andrew Letty's, meaning whatever happened in the lighthouse was not a cure, but a successful brainwashing of a Marshal. Now let's talk about the second and darkest theory, which gives a completely different perspective to this entire film. This theory says that neither any mind control was running on Shutter Island, nor was Teddy doing any detective work. The truth is that a place named Shutter Island did not physically exist in this way at all. This entire island, this hospital, this storm, and all these people were actually a terrible nightmare running inside Andrew Letty's mind. According to this psychological theory, due to the deep mental shock Andrew Letty suffered after losing his wife, he has gone into a coma or a very deep state of mental illness. He is lying on the bed of an ordinary hospital in some city, and his sick mind, to escape from that unbearable truth and guilt, creates an entire imaginary world while sleeping. He sees himself as a hero who has come to solve a case. Pay attention, many things happen in the film which are possible only in dreams. As soon as Teddy lights a match, inside the cave he suddenly finds that missing female Dr. Rachel Solando, who tells him about the conspiracies. But as soon as it is morning, that cave and that woman disappear. The way things change suddenly in dreams. Sometimes fire, sometimes water, sometimes a sudden storm. This is all proof that we are not watching a reality, but the turmoil of a sleeping, broken human being's mind who is struggling for the last time to save himself before coming to his senses. And now we come to that theory which shook the ground beneath the audience's feet. This theory proves our sweet and loyal-looking partner Chuck All to be the biggest and most brutal villain of this entire story. The theory says that Chuck was no new Marshal or any Dr. Sheehan. He was actually the most cunning and secret director of this entire hospital, who was directing the game of completely imprisoning Teddy inside the madhouse. Those who believe in this theory say that Chuck took advantage of Teddy's trust throughout the journey. When both of them go near the cliffs, Chuck suddenly disappears and Teddy sees his corpse below. But when Teddy reaches below, there is only an empty coat instead of a corpse. Chuck deliberately faked his death so that Teddy would break down completely mentally and run straight towards the lighthouse, where Dr. Colley was sitting ready to make his final hunt. Even in the very last frame of the film, when Teddy talks to Chuck, Chuck makes a gesture to the doctor standing far away. That gesture was not of a helpless friend. That gesture was of a puppet master, who had successfully completed his game. But whether these theories look true or false, the real significance of this film is not in this. Its real significance is in how it connects with our real world. Because now we are going to enter that deepest and eye-opening part, where this film rises above entertainment, and becomes a scary truth of your and my real life. This vortex of conspiracies is challenging your thinking capacity. But now the time has come to come out of this island and see that truth of our own world, from which we all are running away. After watching Shutter Island, people often debate for weeks on whether Teddy was mad or was made a victim of a conspiracy. But if we step back a little from this cinematic screen and think with a cool mind, we will understand that Martin Scorsese had not just shown the story of a detective or a patient. He exposed that biggest weakness of the human mind, from which every single person in today's world is suffering. In psychology, this weakness has been given a name: confirmation bias. That is, A mental state where our mind accepts only that truth which matches our pre-existing beliefs or our fears. Look at Teddy Daniels in the film. His mind was not able to tolerate a huge shock. To escape from that unbearable truth, his mind forged a false story that his wife died in a fire and some Andrew Leddies is her culprit. Whatever clues he gets throughout the film, his mind forcefully fits those clues into this false story of his. He flatly refuses to believe any such fact or evidence which is against this theory of his. Today, exactly this is happening in our real world too. We all have made our own Shutter Island, inside our minds, where we choose our reality according to our convenience. In today's digital age, the work that Dr. Colley and his team of doctors were doing on Shutter Island, the exact same work is being done today by the social media algorithms hidden in your phone. Just think, when you go to any social media platform, you are repeatedly shown the same content, the same reels, and the same news which you like or which make you angry. These algorithms read your subconscious mind so closely that they use your fear, your insecurity, and your obsession to set up a fake reality in front of you, from which you can never come out. Just like the doctors gave Teddy a false clue of Rachel Solando, and made him run across the island, today these tech companies are making you run behind fake news, conspiracy theories, and propaganda. We are living in a world where truth is not what actually exists, but truth has become what has been made to believe by repeatedly showing it on your screen. Shutter Island warns us that when a system gains the power to control your mind, it can make you believe everything it wants. You will keep considering yourself a free detective, but in reality, you would have become a prisoner of someone else's cage. The most sensitive and deep aspect of this real-life connection is trauma and escapism. Shutter Island teaches us how fragile and at the same time how powerful a human mind can be. When an incident happens in life which we do not have the strength to bear within us, whether it is the grief of losing someone close, a huge failure, or an old mental wound, our mind chooses the path of escapism, running away from reality to save itself. How many of us do exactly this daily in our real life? When we have to face our mistakes, when we have to see our shortcomings, we close our eyes. We start blaming the whole world. We accuse others of plotting conspiracies, just like Teddy, who felt that the whole island was against him. Shutter Island is no fictional story, it is the tale of every person who, lacking the courage to face a bitter truth, goes to sleep covering themselves with a blanket of a sweet and comfortable lie. This film asks us a question: are we truly free? Or are we all imprisoned on the island of our own created guilt and fear? But after this bitter reality of the human mind, now we are going to step into that most controversial part of this journey, which has been hidden inside the corridors of censorship boards in Hollywood till today. Some dark facts, some controversies, and some disturbing scenarios that will goosebump you. Because after this, the last door of the island is about to open. This illusion of reality is now on the verge of breaking. But some such secrets are still buried in the dungeons of Shutter Island, which everyone does not have the guts to face. When we watch Shutter Island today, it looks like an excellent psychological thriller to us. But very few people know that the original cut of this film prepared by Martin Scorsese was so disturbing and scary that the Hollywood Censor Board broke into a sweat. The American Censor Board was preparing to give this film a straight NC-17 rating, meaning a rating after which this film would not have been able to release in theaters at all and would have been badly ruined at the box office. In the original cut of the film, the scenes inside Ward C were filmed much longer and darker. Especially those scenes where the process of the cruel lobotomy surgery performed in mental hospitals of the 1950s was shown very closely and with details. Apart from this, the flashback scenes of Dachau concentration camp during World War II had some such visuals of piles of corpses and human cruelty, seeing which some people of the test audience started crying inside the theater itself. Martin Scorsese was forced to trim many minutes of this footage sitting at the editing table. Only then this film got an R rating and could reach cinema halls. It is said that when you make a film at a place whose history is full of pain and deaths, that negative energy affects your work too. During the shooting in that real deserted mental asylum of Medfield State Hospital, many such strange and scary incidents happened which shook the entire crew. When the shooting of that historic storm part of the film was going on, in reality too a severe storm hit that area. That real storm completely destroyed the heavy lighting cranes and lights worth millions of dollars installed on the set, due to which shooting had to be stopped for several weeks. People present on the set, even if in jest, started believing that this island itself does not want its story to come in front of the world. But the darkest truth of this production was hidden in Leonardo DiCaprio's mental state. DiCaprio was immersed in the psychology of the characters of this film to such an extent that by the last weeks of shooting, he became a victim of clinical depression, and anxiety in real life. Marshal stated in an interview that many times even after the scene was over, Leonardo did not come out of his room and used to sit in the dark for hours. He had considered the pain of that character so real that his own mind started forgetting the difference between reality and acting. It is still discussed in the corridors of Hollywood that Shutter Island is Leonardo's best performance because he was not acting in that film, rather he was genuinely fighting the monsters within him. But after all these controversies and dark facts, now we have reached the final and most important stop of this entire journey. Now the time has come to open that last door of the lighthouse. An ending after seeing which people remained entangled for years. But today, we will see that hidden aspect of that ending which no one has noticed till date. Let's walk towards the last steps of Shutter Island. All the secrets of the island are now going to be exposed. Hold your heart because in front of you is coming that ending, which shook the whole world. Now we are standing at that last turn of this mysterious journey, where all the layers of Shutter Island are going to open one by one. In front of us is that scary lighthouse, to go inside which Teddy Daniels risked his life. But before we open that last door of the lighthouse and see that final scene, get one thing very well into your mind. Martin Scorsese never made the ending of this film to give a straight answer to any question. It was designed in such a way that after the film ends, the real torture and real confusion should start inside your eye. The audience's mind. After watching the whole film, when you see its last scene where Teddy is sitting on that green bench with his partner Chuck, your attention should not be on whether he is telling the truth or a lie. You don't have to find evidence of Doctor's conspiracy or Teddy's madness. You only have to look into the eyes of Teddy Daniels. Leonardo DiCaprio has expressed the truth with his eyes and his facial expressions in that last scene, which 90% of the audience misses the first time. That truth is not about his identity, that truth is about a massive and final choice of his. The ending of Shutter Island stands a dilemma in front of you, where the walls of reality and imagination collapse forever. When Teddy sits on that last bench and speaks that last sentence from his mouth, that sentence was his last and biggest rebellion against the entire system of Ashcliffe Hospital. It is a sentence that proves that no matter how sick a human's subconscious mind is, when it comes to saving one's soul, it can choose a path about which no one can even think. Listen, what was that last phrase that came out of Teddy's mouth? He asked Chuck a question that divided cinema lovers around the world into two factions. A question that decides who won this entire war of Shutter Island. The doctors, the conspiracy, or that broken heart of Teddy Daniels himself. Let's hear those final words. Teddy looked at Chuck and asked very calmly, which would be worse, to live as a monster, or to die as a good man? Now, the choice is in your hands. Tell me, was that ending of Shutter Island true? Or have the real victims of this entire mind game and manipulation been not Teddy Daniels, but us, the audience of this film? Had he really lost his senses, or had he found that final and most sacred way to escape from his unbearable guilt and pain, which the doctors could never understand? After watching this video completely without writing any long line in the comment box below, comment just one word. If you think he became a victim of the doctor's conspiracy or was truly mad, then comment monster. And if you think that he chose that last path of his own free will while being in his senses, then comment man. Just one word, monster or man. Let's see who has genuinely understood this scary and deep game of Shutter Island after this video.